Third session of America-Georgia Business Council's 24th annual meeting. Today is our last session of annual meeting, last of 3 sessions, but definitely one of the most interesting one, focusing on digitalization of economy, post-pandemic economy in Georgia, in wider region. We'll talk in a sense about future of economy, future of trade, future of different type of vision of economic development with much greater role for digitalization and digital economy in it. So my name is Mamuka Tsereteli. I'm a president of America-Georgia Business Council. I'm also a scholar of Black Sea Caspian region. And this is our 24th annual conference. As we said earlier, we try to make as much effort as we can to facilitate trade and economic relationship between the United States and Georgia, facilitate investments, facilitate trade definitely, and other aspects of economic activities between 2 countries. But definitely we are also interested in what is going on in the region surrounding Georgia and facilitate every kind of activity that makes Georgian economy stronger. We have excellent lineup of speakers for today, and thanks to all for joining us. And we'll start presentations with Vice Governor of National Bank of Georgia, Central Bank of Georgia, Mr. Archil Mestvirishvili. We'll move, by the way, I'll do little introductions of each individual speakers when we move to the speakers, but our second speaker will be Nino Peranidze, senior analyst at Galt and Taggart. Then Anatoly, Mr. Anatoly Motkin, president of Strategeast. I emphasize East. And then Mr. Kiguradze, who is replacing Mr. Kakha Gelashvili, co-founder of Payze. Irakli is the chief business development officer at the Payze, one of the startup, already growing startup of Georgian origin. Mr. Colin Donohue, who has a history of facilitating e-commerce and startup businesses between Georgia and the United States. And definitely, last but not least, Miss Diana Kiguradze, regional manager for the Caucasus for Visa. We are happy to declare that Visa is a member company of America-Georgia Business Council, and hopefully others on the call will join America-Georgia Business Council down the road as well. So we'll start with Mr. Archil Mestvirishvili, who is probably one of the most experienced macroeconomists of Georgia, with 2 decades of experience, almost 2 decades of experience in central bank and in different capacities, and who's also, in a sense, for this purpose of this conversation today, serves as a key enabler of digitalization of economy when it comes to the payment systems, when it comes to the banking system participation in the process. And overall, as we know, central bank, which is National Bank of Georgia, is enabler of economy, creating stability, necessary stability, monetary stability that is essential for functioning economy. So Archil, without further ado, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mamuka, for this nice introduction, and also for organizing this kind of conferences related to economy of Georgia, with special focus post-pandemic period. So let me share slides. I have just a few slides, and I will try to briefly cover what are the current challenges and developments in the payment systems in Georgia. Hope you see slides. Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So I think, as in every country, pandemic affected demand for digitalization, and in terms of the payment system, also we see that it's growing importance of the card payments and all other non-cash type of the payments in the country. So Card payments compared to 2019, and on the graph you see just to 2021 without December. With December the numbers will be larger. It's compared to 2019 increased by about 50% in terms of the volume, in terms of the number of transactions by about 40%. We have seen rapid increase in mobile banking as well. It's almost doubled compared to 2019. And also we have this virtual cards, number of payment using these mobile cards is also increasing with the same phase. In terms of the total infrastructure of payment system, cards have largest share, still about 85% based on 2020 data. It's payment cards. So we have this growth, but we also see that there is a more potential. So that if you compare the withdrawal of cash from ATMs, it's still larger. So it's a card used very actively to withdraw cash rather than make payments. Of course, this maybe in 1 or 2 years, this will proportions will change. But what I would like to say is that there is a potential for growth in the payment system. So as a central bank, our role is to ensure the safe, sustainable, efficient functioning of the payment system. And for that, we have a few challenges for coming years. I will start from infrastructure. So currently we have RTGS system, which serves domestic transactions. And we also have, of course, Visa, MasterCard, and other cards used actively domestically. But we also see the need for new payment infrastructure. And we are working on instant payment system, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Legislation is very important because we need to have clear rules for payment system participants. And we are updating our legislation, and according to association agreement, we need to have our payment regulation and systems in line to Payment System Directive 2. So we are approximating our law to PSD2, and so law it's virtually ready, and it soon will be submitted to the parliament. Safety of payments, it's very important. So of course it has financial stability dimension, but also the safer our payment system, it's more efficient they are. For customers to use, for users to actively engage in digital payments, consumer protection, it's vital. And PSD2 gives more clarification for the consumer protection rules, and I will talk a little bit about that as well. Of course, in every area, competition is a driving force. So in payment system in Georgia, we also want to increase competition to allow non-bank participants. And of course, more competition you have, more oversight is needed to have stability and safety in the system. And last but not least, it's central bank digital currency. As many countries, we are also doing some research in this area, and I will briefly cover that as well. So starting from the instant payment system, by February next year, we are going to open tender, and system is forecasted to be ready by February, March in 2023. So the first phase, and then the second, the final phase will be by June, July of 2023. So this will allow instant availability of the funds, and payments up to 10,000 laris will be able to go through this system. And we will update our RTGS system to support liquidity and settlement for instant payment participants. And we open instant payment for non-bank payment system providers as well. So about the security, We just recently implemented strong customer authentication, which is almost fully implemented. There are some areas left, but this work is in progress. Because of the digitalization, the fraudsters are also gaining more knowledge and experience. So we need to fight them as well. And we are asking payment system providers to have monitoring systems. And some banks are implementing this individually, this system which will monitor, and they try to isolate fraudsters and also some abnormal activities in the system. So the customers or the banks will be protected to lose their money. And also we have like medium-sized banks and small banks. They are going to implement one solution, and they will share this one solution. And security, of course, comes for cost of the security. Higher security is maybe less user experience, and we need to balance it. And we also allow, where there is a low risk transactions, we allow banks not to have strong customer authentication. But in this case, payment system providers, they need to take all risk in case of not authorized transactions. For consumer protection, so in the new payment system directive 2, it brings more clarity what is the role for customer and what is the role of payment system provider, and when and how unauthorized transactions should be reimbursed. So if it's unauthorized, it should be done immediately. If it takes time, then deposit rate should be reimbursed as well. And banks should help customers if there is to recover their funds if they make a mistake in transaction, and the clarity of fees. So I think this largely changes customer protection in payment system in the country, this new law. But of course, this will risk, and banks highlight this as well, so this will change customer behavior as well. So if customer wants to commit the fraud, they can do it themselves. There is a risk of it as well. So we are also introducing dispute resolution bodies, so the banks don't need to go to the court every time. So or customer or bank will go to the dispute resolution body, which will be with the central bank. It will be professionals. We will have like a maybe 5-person board. 2 will be central bank employees, but 3 will be outsider, just professionals, and they will discuss the issue and make the decision, which will be binding. But participants will still have the right to go to the court to appeal this decision. In terms of the more competition, so we just started open banking. So you can use application on one bank to see your accounts in another bank. So it's already possible. But we are waiting to fully implement open banking. We are waiting for changes in the law, which and under this new law, we will introduce payment initiation services and account information service. And non-bank PSPs will be also able to use this service and to have access to their bank account and develop new IT solutions for customers, no matter they are bank or they are non-bank institutions. So then the competition will be who will develop better IT solutions for the customer. And so these non-bank payment system providers will also have access to the instant payment systems through open banking as well. But as I mentioned, we need more oversight, and we are introducing capital requirement for so-called important payment system providers, and of course they all have 100% liquidity requirement now, but they will have some additional requirement for operational risks and safety. And those who will meet these requirements, they will be able to participate in IPS, and later we are going to give them access to RTGS as well, but they will be maybe a couple years from now. And we also are introducing new rules from so-called prominently important payment systems. Of course, there are stability, risk management requirements, but also open access to Opel and we can say like equal access to all participants. And so last issue is digital lari. So we try to do research as maybe almost all central banks are doing. As far as I know, only one central bank who have employed, I think it's Nigeria, who fully employed central bank digital currency. China did partially, and there are some other central banks who are advanced in this area. So CBDC have some potential. So it's can be secure, fast, especially for smart contracts. It has also potential to open up new developments in technology which will promote digital transformation. But of course, this central bank digital currency has some risks which we are mindful, and this is why we are not rushing with that. And this is disintermediation risk. So CBDC means that it's central bank liability, so customers can open accounts with the central bank, directly deposit their money with the central bank, which leaves less funding for commercial banks to do their lending activities. It means that then we need to lend to the bank, so it decreases efficiency. Also, there are risks during the financial volatility, so the money can flow from banks to CBDC. Cyber security, of course, because more digitalization, it's flexibility, but cyber risks are increasing. And we also want to say that there are few unknown risks because this is very significant change. So we try to be as careful as possible. So we have some documentation for CBDC projects on the web if somebody is interested. So this is all from my side. Of course, I will be happy to answer questions if any.
Thank you, Archil. I think you gave us lots of information. A lot of things are happening. I'm sure there will be some questions, and hopefully we'll have enough time to discuss at least some of the questions. Our next speaker will be Nino Peranidze. She's a senior researcher, analyst at the Galt and Taggart investment bank. Galt and Taggart is our partner for many years and participates. Their representatives participate in many different events that is organized by America-Georgia Business Council. Nino, please go ahead with your presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for organizing this conference. I will talk about e-commerce sector in Georgia. We published initial coverage of this sector this summer, and I will tell you about our main findings from this research. I will start by reviewing the key data about this sector. The total online purchases amounted about 600 million laris in 2020, according to our estimates. This is equivalent of circa $200 million US. The number of online shoppers amounted more than 630,000 people. These are people who purchased online goods or services at least once in 2020. And this translates into average online spending of 950 laris. This is 3 times lower amount than the European average, so they think the growth opportunity is very large. Notably, share of local e-commerce from all this spending is only 23%, which is very low, and most online purchases goes to cross-border online shops. Share of online shoppers in Georgia is very low, only 70% in 2020, which is below not only developed European countries, but also our regional countries such as Turkey, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and so on. This indicates that sector is still at its early development stage, and we think growth potential is very huge, and COVID pandemic boosted and triggered this transition toward online shopping. To look at the dynamics, the trend is very positive, especially in 2020 after the COVID pandemic, especially local e-commerce, which tripled, more than tripled in 2020 and amounted 140 million laris during the pandemic. And then again, almost double in 2021. This is still very little number. It's only 1% of total retail sales in Georgia. And this is 12 times lower than European average and 18 times lower than global average, which indicates that growth potential is very large, and we are just starting in this sector. To look at the product categories, electronics, household appliances, and equipment is the winner with 65% share in total sales value, followed by apparel and accessories with 16% share, home and furnishing materials, and so on. The e-commerce penetration rate is low in all of these product categories, so growth potential is very huge in all of them. To move on to foreign cross-border purchases, I already mentioned that local e-commerce is still pretty little, and Georgians spend 3 times larger amount of money in international shops, American, European, and Chinese. The top 4 websites are Amazon, Taobao, eBay, and AliExpress, which attract for about 2/3 of the total online sales. They attract Georgian customers with several advantages, starting with low prices, large product variety, and superior user experience. The fact that Georgia spends 3 times larger amount of money cross-border, even though it takes larger amount of time to deliver, and of course it costs extra for the shipping costs, means that local demand is much larger than local supply. This is caused by a number of reasons. First of all, Georgian businesses have poor presence in online ecosystem. Even though 95% of Georgian businesses have access to internet access is also high among households. Only 37% of business entities use social media, and only 20% of them use a web page. The number of companies that have online services is even lower, only 3.2%, even after the COVID pandemic at the end of 2020. And even with the companies that offer online services and have a web page, we see a number of problems, technical or with user experience. Most of them lack such basic features as a full catalog of products and price lists, detailed product descriptions, up-to-date information about availability of the products in their storage, product return and refund possibilities. Most of them don't have delivery services in all regions. There's a problem with user-friendly interface, personalized recommendations, customer support module, product comparison option, and so on. So Georgian companies must and should take more time and make more effort to make user experience more comfortable and increase their competitiveness against international retailers, which will be really hard. Of course, besides their technical functionality and user experience, there are some environmental factors that support or hinder the sector development. We evaluate e-commerce environment pretty favorable for a number of reasons. First of all, Georgians have high access to internet. It's 85% of households have access to internet, which is equal to European average and higher than our regional countries. Developed banking sector, Georgia ranks among 20 top countries with access to banking services. We have high rate of card and bank card ownership, which is of course crucial for online purchases, and relatively young population. More than 50% of Georgia's population is below 40 years, when it's 45% in Europe. So their tolerance and adoption, digital adoption, is pretty high. And of course, there are some constraints, such as low purchasing power of households, inefficient logistics environment that hinder not only international but also local e-commerce and logistics, and low urbanization rate. Only 59% of Georgians live in the cities, when the urbanization rate is 75% in European countries. Now, considering all of this and the current trends in local e-commerce market, we think this sector will keep growing from current penetration rate of 1% to almost 6% by 2025. We already see the emergence of large-scale companies. We have My Market, Vendu, Extra-G, Wishlist, and so on. We see emergence of new companies such as Velisor, which have large capital expenditures and ambitious growth plans. So we think this sector will keep growing. This changed behavior during the pandemic won't go away. In post-pandemic period, it will persist, and this transition to online services is inevitable. We can't make a way out of it, and the companies also see that it was not only a way to survive during the lockdowns, it should be their long-term strategy. We on our side will provide the sector with our reports, our analysis, and help them to make informed and data-driven decisions. Thank you so much. This is all from me for now, and I will gladly answer your questions.
Thank you, Nino. I just wanted to also mention that your presentation is based on a report that Galt and Taggart published last summer on e-commerce in Georgia, which is, I think, interesting analysis of the trends. But I'm sure by the end of this year and early next year, we'll have more data about what's happening in 2021. And I'm sure this is supporting your expectations that we are presented here today. Our next speaker is Mr. Anatoly Motkin, who has very extensive experience of working in different parts of Eurasian continent, from Eastern Europe to Central Asia, focusing on issues of information technology and digitalization and e-commerce and other issues that are important subjects of this conversation today. And Anatoly, who knows Georgia very well, will present his views about Georgia, but also he will probably have something to say about regional perspective as well. So Anatoly, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mamuka, and thank you to our audience. Yes, I would like to present the, just in a sec, I'll share the slides. What actually has been done in Georgia in regard of developing the not only the digital economy, but specifically the export-oriented IT sector, just 1 year. So we started working in Georgia. So a couple of words about Strategeast. Strategeast is a US-based 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to assist to Eurasian countries out of Russia to develop, to diversify their economy and actually to develop knowledge-driven economy and to transform the old traditional industrial and the agriculture and maybe natural resource-based economy to a knowledge-driven model. And this way, we're able to resolve different issues like gender equality, to present and to develop equal opportunities for each in those countries, but also to preserve the human capital in those countries and to prevent the brain drain. So at first stage, the goal of Strategeast in Georgia is to create thriving IT industry fully integrated into the global economy that will create tens of thousands of new jobs for Georgians with a salary 3-4 times at least higher than the average salary in the country and focused on the export of high-tech products. Just to say that our aim is in 5 years to develop 5% or to generate 5% out of Georgia's GDP out of IT industry. And it's quite realistic. We're talking about $800 to $900 million a year. It's about $70 to $80 million a month. So to achieve this goal, Strategeast collaborates with the key stakeholders, with the Georgian government, Ministry of Finance, of Economy, with the Ministry of Education, and also with the Georgian Innovation and Technology Agency, JITA. Also, we work with international institutions like the World Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and others. We work with donors like USAID, GIZ, and others. We work with the universities, with global IT industry representatives like EPAM, Microsoft, Exadol, and others, and also with local enterprises. As part of the IT industry creation, Strategeast is working in 4 areas: advocacy, education, ecosystem creation, and investment attractions. So when we're talking about the advocacy, we're working with the Georgian government to develop modern IT industry in the country. We're engaging international institutions to take part in this process, and we attract the attention of the global IT industry to Georgia. Throughout 2020 and to 2021, Georgian government officials were regularly engaged in speaking in Strategeast Live panels, where issues of creating an ecosystem for the development of the IT industry were discussed. Also in September 2020, the second Strategeast State and IT Eurasian Forum was held in Tbilisi, and the forum brought together representatives of the Georgian government, international institutions, global and local IT industry. And 3 important achievements we had within the forum. First, for the first time, Georgia presented the new tax initiative that we started working on those days, the 5% decrease or developing the special tax regime for IT industry and decreasing the income tax for the employees of international IT companies from 20% to 5%. The second achievement was that Georgian government declared that the IT industry is their 3rd priority, along with the agriculture and tourism. And it was important to attract donors and to attract others who understand that it became a priority for the government. And the third one, that one of the leading global IT companies, EPAM Systems, declared that they're going to open their offices in Georgia and Tbilisi. It became a signal for others like Exadol, Taggart, and many other companies that Georgia deserves a new attention, and maybe it was to open the offices there and to start working in the country. So I'll try to squeeze this report. So we started with the Strategeast IT Hub in Georgia, jointly with the JITA and jointly with global IT companies. We started teaching 40 students just about 2 years ago. And we had to put it on hold because of the pandemic, but we renewed this education as a one-on-one remote education model. And then those all 40 students, our model is not to split the education and the hiring process. So actually the companies who are going to become an employer for those students are going to train them, or we're training them within our programs. And this format proved itself as sufficient for laying a foundation in the country like Georgia, where we did have some high-skilled individuals working for banking sector, gambling sector, or in the governmental sector, but we didn't have companies, international companies, developing appropriate level of delivery. And that's what was actually required in Georgia to assist to the local companies or international companies from Georgia to work with international customers. So developing the ecosystem. So again, Colin knows well our friends from USMAC, who actually collaborate with us on some programs, work on their behalf on some programs, but they're doing a great job to develop a pipeline of startups in the country. And again, we know that this year, the first startup was acquired for $50 million, as far as I know, at the end of May, at the beginning of June. And it was actually, although it's not unicorn, but it's important as an experience for Georgia. Again, the flat rate tax of 5% was important incentive for international companies to start working from Georgia. And also we have set up an ICT Association of Georgia with both local companies like Altasoft and others, and Bank of Georgia and some other companies, and also with international companies represented in Georgia. And for the first time, those stakeholders got together to discuss what are their common challenges, to ask what they need from the government, but also to start working with international financial institutions, but also with international donors who are interested also to develop this industry that generates new revenues and brings new money into the country. So investments attraction. We started working with Enterprise Georgia to assist them to develop special tools to attract Belarusian companies, Ukrainian companies, other companies, or American companies working in those countries to start working in Georgia. So in collaboration with Enterprise Georgia, we've held a special webinar for international companies working in Eurasian region, and to explain them what are the advantages of working or establishing or setting up an IT business in Georgia. Again, I told already about our forum held in Tbilisi last year in hybrid mode, our meetings with the government officials, and it's also important that we put a lot of efforts to explain to the government in the Ministry of Economy, Prime Minister, others, all prime ministers that were within this period, that they should feel co-ownership on developing this sector. Because without this, without mentioning this explicitly in each meeting with the donors, with international institutions, they will not get enough funds for fast development of the sector. To summarize this work within the last year, today we have from zero, just a year ago, the first international company was registered in Georgia on November 1st. Today we have 30 international companies registered within the revenue service of Georgia as international IT companies working from the country. It was about creating 2,000 new highly paid jobs just in 1 year. Moreover, it's about $25 million increase in IT experts this year, and it's about another 50 next year. And we should remember also one important fact, that each IT entrepreneur, it's not only income for his family and himself, it's also another 5 jobs created in non-related sectors of the economy, like waitress in restaurant, construction builder, taxi driver, and others. So actually, by setting up or creating new jobs, not only in Tbilisi, but in the regions, and we're going to start working in Zugdidi and Kutaisi, and then we'll extend it to another 10 cities, towns in this country, we will allow to the local youngsters to stay there where they're living and to develop their own regions. And that's extremely important, because we always try not to encourage to have a very young capital and very old suburbs. So our future plans. Strategeast will continue its work on the development of the IT industry in Georgia. We'll expand the IT Hub Education Center, as I mentioned right now. We'll continue to attract global IT companies to the Georgian market, spreading the perception of Georgia as a new and trusted IT destination to train local youth for the global industry. As part of joint program with the IT accelerator with US SMAC, we'll enable local startups to get an access to the global markets and investments, and also to educate the local capital to be invested in local human capital. And it's important, and it's something that maybe Colin will mention within his presentation about setting up a new fund in Georgia that will invest local money and global money into local startups. And together with the representatives of the global IT industry, we will keep developing the digital transformation of Georgia and strengthening its digital resilience.
Thank you, Anatoly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there's some impressive numbers that you presented are definitely very interesting. I myself had experience, as you know, discussions with EPAM and conversations with Arkady Dobkin and others. So I think this is very encouraging. And I think this is a part of the positive picture is that there are startups who are successful in raising funds, not only in Georgia, but in the US. And Payze is a company that is actually a good example of that. And I'm glad to have this panel is representative in many different facets and ways, including in the different generational representation. And Irakli definitely much younger than I am. And so nice to see him and his company be part of this conversation. Payze is my understanding is a payment system that will be facilitating different business activities and greater growth of digitalization of economy. But I'm definitely less familiar with the business than he is. He's a business development head of Payze. And Irakli, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. To start off, I would like to introduce speak about the Payze itself. We are a payment service provider, which is licensed by the National Bank of Georgia. At the moment, we are operating in Georgia and will start our operations in 2 weeks in Uzbekistan as well. We are on the merge of obtaining the license as well. We work in the following manner by the sub-acquiring agreements with the banks. So basically we are using the acquiring banks in order to process the transactions, and we create our own payment types and modify them in order for them to be more appealing and kind of effective for the merchants and the companies in Georgia. We kind of, our ideal company that we are trying to mimic in our operations is the Stripe, which is an international player in the world. And we are kind of, the operational part of our company is kind of the same. We believe that digitalization of payment is the inevitable notion that appeared, especially after the pandemic as well. And we try our best to make sure that we kind of capture all the possible markets that we are targeting. First of all, I want to say that in order to kind of digitalize the payments and that positively impacts both the economy in Georgia and the companies that are operating here, is that we try to offer international cross-border transactions via the bank cards to our merchants. So basically allowing this potentially increases the influx of funds from the international cards towards inside the country and its economy. Therefore it's available both for the country itself and the companies that are operating here. Before us, the process of accepting international cards were quite complex and associated with many bureaucratic processes. But of course, accepting international cards that are part of Visa, MasterCard, American Express networks is not that easy and associated with a kind of risks. And in order to mitigate that risks, our main mission is to create all the possible risk and fraud and anti-money laundering operations by ourselves, because basically this is as we believe, the pure mission of PSPs as it is. So basically what we do is we have inner limits on transactions from the international cards and Georgian cards as well, but mostly for international ones. We have developed some kind of machine learning techniques that helps us understand if there is some kind of not correct behavior in terms of payments during the day and in a span of a week. And also what is the most important that we are proud of, we have almost finished integration with a Visa Cyber Source program, which is one of the best anti-fraud monitoring tools that kind of stops the transaction from happening even before, straight after the cardholder inputs his card data. Therefore, if the card data that is inputted in the website of any platform, it were somehow in the history of its existence associated with any kind of risky and fraudulent transactions, a Visa Cyber Source helps us to kind of stop it in order for us to avoid the potential chargebacks. And also, like, basically why acquiring banks kind of transferred the international cards usage to our company and are not really willing to take it themselves is that because we are responsible for chargebacks, and therefore, if, for example, if something happens and any kind of transaction passes through these anti-fraud mechanisms and chargebacks occur, we are responsible for it financially and both administration-wise, and therefore these risks are mitigated for bank, and that's why we are kind of product market fit in this sense. The second part I would like to say that how we are helping to digitalize the payments is that we are reducing time to market of the companies that want to accept online payments. So basically, in order for you to accept online payments via Payze, from an administrational point of view, you just need 2 business days to become a verified merchant. Therefore, so you can accept the payments. So basically, we are having this KYC checks and AML checks of the companies in order to grant them the right to accept payments. There are some kind of companies and MCC codes that we are not accepting at all. So we are basically more operating on low risk and mid risk merchants, and we don't want to touch at the moment the high risk companies. And after passing these checks, it just takes only 2 days in order to accept the payments. And from the technical standpoint of view, we have created very self-explanatory and robust API documentation and software development kits for almost all programming languages. Therefore, like if the developer of a company wants to integrate our payments into the website or application, it maximum that it will take him or her is basically 1 day. And we had some cases that many developers integrate our payments in 2 hours, which is quite impressive. And therefore, this helps to minimize the development costs, time spent on this administrative processes. Basically, the companies can start selling online very fast. So like if you kind of rewind the time back to the COVID, when suddenly everything was closed in the country and the majority of the businesses were not able to sell any kind of goods they had that they used to sell physically, being fast in this case is really important. And we believe that in this sense, we bring value to the market itself. A third part I would like to mention is that we recently, about 2 months, we have developed a new product. It's kind of online marketplace, basically for the small and medium enterprises that are selling their goods and services via social media pages, like for example, the Instagram shops or Facebook shops, and are using traditional methods such as like pay by cash or direct bank transfer, which is quite we believe at least old-fashioned and time-consuming. We allow them to receive online payments as well, and kind of we allow them to create a website without actually having a website. All they need to do is just to upload their products in our system. An automatic link is generated where all the products are showcased in one web page, and their users can basically choose the products and make a purchase via the bank card. And previously, in order for a company to be able to kind of accept online payments, they needed to have at least a website or a demo version of it or application. Right now, we are providing the KYC and AML checks of such companies via their social media pages as well. So for example, Facebook shop or Facebook page of the company is becoming already enough for us to understand whether the company will potentially be associated with any risks and kind of grant them the rights to accept payments online. And our aim is basically to be present in all CIS region countries and to be a unique platform that kind of is an umbrella for payments in this region. Basically, what we want to achieve is that, for instance, one company in Georgia, after integration of Payze in Georgia, decides to expand their operations in Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan or Russia or Ukraine. They will be already once integrated with Payze, and they will need just half an hour to accept payments in Uzbekistan as well. The only prerequisite for that is just to have a local legal entity registered there and to have a local bank account. And we have a really good example of this already, because kind of we are trying to motivate our own merchants to expand. And the 2 companies that are using our services is already expanding to Uzbekistan after our motivation kind of pushing them to go there, after we realized that the e-commerce market there is also really fast growing. And there are many cases in markets that took Georgian companies to expand their payment operations in a different country that took them more than 3 months. So basically, after we'll be present in all these regions, we'll allow a company from Georgia to enter Uzbekistan market from a payment standpoint of view in half an hour. Instead of 3 months, they need to kind of integrate with a new system and become a merchant in the local bank, for example. And this will allow all the companies in the region to easily expand their operations. And therefore, this will benefit both the global economy of CIS region and, of course, the Georgia as well, as it's kind of the initial touch point that we are moving towards the CIS region. And we also, of course, acknowledge the fact that in many CIS countries, card payments are not still penetrated the market yet, and there are many kind of local card networks that are not that risk averse. Therefore, we are looking for the future, and the penetration of, for example, Visa and MasterCard is increasing year by year in those countries. And we also, it's a kind of our secondary KPI is to push the markets via our, let's say, pricing strategies and all the payment types we have in order for those countries to have more Visa and MasterCard, or for example, American Express usage, because those card networks are the most protected ones, and all the chargebacks that happen through these networks are regulated by the kind of one body, which is, for example, Visa in this case, and all the transactions that go through our system is going to be legit and not associated with any fraudulent potential threats that we may face in those regions. Yes, basically, this is all I wanted to speak. This is our value and mission, and we'll try our best in the following years to grow very rapidly in order to this not to be just a talk and be actual results, and allow these companies to navigate in CS region in a very fast and quick manner.
Thank you very much. Definitely very interesting, and we'll be definitely observing your growth and supporting any way we can. So our next speaker would be Mr. Colin Donohue, who now, in a sense, we are moving between practitioners and enablers. So I would consider you both probably, but let me hear what you have to say about digitalization of post-pandemic economy in Georgia. You are based in Tbilisi.
Yeah, thank you, Mamuka. I want to comment on Archil's work as an example of kind of the category of people that I'm working with. I work in the startup space, and by startup, we don't mean just anything new, SME. We mean people who want to take on the world, who want to grow companies out of Georgia into the international market. So Payze is really a global first company, in my opinion, and Archil was very humble. But they have succeeded in competing and being accepted into Y Combinator, graduating from Y Combinator, and being backed by some amazing supporters at Evaluation that we would be very proud of in the US as well. So congratulations, Archil, and I hope folks keep in touch with you. And support. So yeah, my name is Colin Donohue. I work with Startup Grind in Georgia, have done startup mentorship and acceleration, serve on the board of the American Chamber of Commerce, European Business Association. So I work a lot as a connector between these different communities. I was brought 6 years ago to Georgia by my musky wife. We were going to be there for 2 years, but what I discovered is a nascent startup community that was very, very exciting. There was a lot of passion, a lot of interest, a lot of excitement, but not a lot of experience. And so over the last 6 years, what I've seen in the sort of the high growth potential, internationally scaling digital companies, I've seen a lot of maturation. I mean, when I hear, the Payze guys talking about fundraising, talking about their strategy, talking about developing product, it really is a sophistication that was absent here even a couple of years ago, even 3 years ago. So for Georgians living in the US and other folks on the call, I would say that there's a unique moment that's happening in Georgia now that's very different than even a couple of years ago. So I'll share a couple just sort of snippets of things that are going on that I find very, very exciting. So what we've been doing with the Startup Grind here is building startup community and culture. There are 3 values that we have that are a lot around building an ecosystem where startups support each other in their growth. We do local events that range from 100 to 500 people on our monthly events. Tbilisi was actually the top chapter in the world of all the 600 Startup Grind chapters that exist in 2019. So I think Tbilisi is really getting on the map in the Startup Grind community, digital nomad community, and a lot of sort of the tech-oriented community. So one banner event was the Europe Asia Connect conference. We brought a bunch of speakers from Silicon Valley. We had probably 30 speakers from Silicon Valley, including VCs, including serious founders. We've had founders of billion-dollar companies. And really what the people who came to Georgia for this event said is that for them, it was a very special event. The venue, of course, was beautiful, one of the most beautiful, they said, but just the passion of the community, the energy was just very electric, it was very inspiring for the participants and also for them. And the majority of people who came for that conference came back. So our mission is to help people fall in love with Georgia and want to spend time here. And indeed, you know, Anatoly mentioned, you know, US Mac and Chris Burry. Chris Burry moved here from Silicon Valley. He now lives just up the hill. So we're kind of collecting some really, really strong technology people and working on having Georgia be a bit of a hub for some of this, you know, Eastern Europe through Central Asian region. Last year, we had to do an online conference. We ended up with about 100 speakers, including Steve Blank, the father of modern entrepreneurship, Guy Kawasaki, and a number of other people. So there are these very high-level people who are starting to become aware of Georgia. We also, in addition to bringing Silicon Valley here, we've brought people to Silicon Valley. So Anatoly mentioned the success of Pulsar AI. These are two of the Pulsar AI founders who we brought to Silicon Valley, and actually partnering with you know, Georgians in Silicon Valley. They got their early investors and partners there, and you know, as fate would have it, 2 years after they got their initial investment, they had an exit. So this created a lot of excitement in the startup community and a lot of excitement in the business community. So we've ended up with a situation where a lot of people are like, oh, the startup thing is really a thing. We got to throw money at it. And whereas we've been sort of in the ecosystem for a while, and we've looked at the dynamics and what we feel is needed for the next step of the ecosystem development. So I'm very excited to share with you some news that we shared this fall. We are partnered with Catapult Ventures on a Catapult Georgia fund. It'll be a country-specific fund with the idea that we'll have a small fund that mobilizes business leaders in Georgia, as well as LPs from Silicon Valley. We have a continuum of support that is provided to startups. So the idea is this is not just throwing money at companies, right? A lot of the founders here have never, you know, grown a company internationally, have never managed a high growth enterprise. So, you know, we have a continuum of sort of me in the ecosystem building stuff, Chris Burry, who's had 9 startups, including a, you know, $1.2 billion exit, and then Josh and Jonathan in Silicon Valley, who have incredible track record in the exits and growth phase of startup investing. So, you know, these guys have invested, you know, 317 companies, well over $500 million, and generated over $17 billion of returns, including 22 companies that have become unicorns. So what we're seeing now is Georgia is at the stage where international VCs and very serious people have begun to take an interest. And like I said, you know, 3 years ago, that was not the case. So, you know, the idea of somebody who can link with all of these companies that they've already sold companies in the past to, who have co-invested with some of the top tier funders in Silicon Valley is pretty exciting. So we're in the process of bringing on limited partners who are investors in the fund. And, you know, if folks are interested in that, we can accommodate that. And I'll make just a couple minutes of remarks just on what I'm seeing in the development of the ecosystem. So we're talking about digitalization, and my little niche is high growth entrepreneurship. You know, when I got here 6 years ago, nobody believed it. Even 3 years ago, investors were like, "Oh, there's not enough good companies." Now we've seen, you know, like Payze is breaking out. We have people. One good signal is that very serious people are leaving their jobs to take a shot at startups. So people are leaving the bank to form startups. People are leaving software development companies to form startups because they believe that the connectivity is there. They believe that they have the knowledge and expertise to take a shot at this, which is very encouraging. And one of the sort of the colleagues of Payze, Thenio, two of the founders are from the U.S., Georgians in the U.S. and New York and Seattle. So they are looking at leaving the U.S. to come to Georgia and grow the company as part of the Georgian ecosystem. So the point behind this is that startups have become very commercially active. And it's, there are people in this vein of international high growth entrepreneurship that are starting to be successful here. And I think it's a very interesting space to watch. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Thanks, Colin. That's very interesting, definitely. And great to see this new opportunities emerging, including on funding side, and definitely the culture is changing, and opportunities will be emerging even further. And with everything that Anatoly and you described, I think we should expect growth in the sector, definitely. And our next speaker is Diana Kiguradze. She comes from a banking background, but spent already more than 3 years with Visa. And Visa is one of the, obviously, companies that also is in this, involved in this process as one of the facilitators of digitalization of economy and with the payment systems, which is a very essential element in the entire development of the entire ecosystem of digital economy. So I would like to ask Diana to provide her comments, and then we'll go to some discussion.
Thank you, Mamuka. Do you hear me well, guys? Just give me. Do you hear me?
Yes, we'll hear you.
Okay.
We're hearing you very well.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And it's a great pleasure to be on the same panel with such interesting speakers and listen to different angles of digitalization in Georgia. And I'm extremely happy to be sharing the panel with our existing strong partners. So we're supporting Payze both in Georgia and in other countries that they are expanding to. And we have been supporting startup grind, and of course, we're driving cashless agenda in Georgia in close partnership with regulator. And I'm happy to be talking about Visa's perspective on digitalization in Georgia today. And I would probably start by saying that we as Visa are constantly aimed at driving innovations on a global scale, and in Georgia in particular. And we do it by introducing new solutions in partnership with our client banks, merchant, government, SMEs, and other participants of the financial ecosystem. So COVID-19 definitely brought significant change to nearly every aspect of our life. Businesses of various sizes and across industries face new obstacles and uncertainty while adjusting to life during a pandemic. But what we have observed for sure is that Georgia has passed the first phase of pandemic much easier than maybe many other countries from our region from technology readiness perspective. And you probably would be asking why. So my answer is that we managed to do our homework timely. And let me first of all start with the role of contactless, right? So Visa has been instrumental in helping Georgia develop as contactless country. I'm proud to recall contactless transactions which were performed in Georgia back in 2009. And we constantly continued contactless development by launching Visa token service in 2015 by introducing mobile payments and launching Apple Pay 2 years ago. And all those efforts from our partner banks, from merchants, from regulator that is constantly supporting cashless development, and from Visa, of course, led to incredible results, I would say. So Georgia is marked as a second country in the world in terms of contactless penetration. in domestic transactions, meaning that almost 10 out of 10 transactions are done contactless, and this is an amazing result on the global scale. So innovation remains our top priority, and we continue expanding the list of the solutions, technologies we have in Georgia, and we're focused on expanding fast money movement products, and one of the exceptional services in terms of money transfers is Visa Direct. So we will continue to boost the service. And we are also rolling out our innovative addition to Visa Direct. This is alias service, which enables money transfers through mobile numbers. And so, as I already said, we're constantly seeking for opportunities. Visa as a global payment network can bring to partners as a we are ready to bring the best solutions that work in other countries where Visa operates. Having Irakli on the panel today provides an amazing opportunity to mention Visa's role in fintech empowerment and support. So as the world becomes more technologically integrated and the financial market is rapidly developing, fintechs definitely play a crucial role in the recovery and restructuring of the global economy. And at Visa, we believe the high adaptability and the ability to do business in new realities make fintech players more resilient to the future challenges. And we are, as an active initiator of a broad range of products and platforms for promotion and further development of innovation for the community of talented entrepreneurs, such as Visa Everywhere initiative, fast track programs for fintech. So we do a lot in this regard to support fintechs and to help them to develop their businesses. And I can proudly say that in terms of fintech development, our small country is on the radar at Visa, because this year, from 760 applicants which took part in Visa Everywhere initiative competition, Payze became the regional winner, and their success again marks Georgia on the list of development countries with huge potential. So again, congratulations to Payze, and we really support them and support the expansion to the region regionally. And lastly, I would stress Visa's commitment to support small and medium businesses. They were hit the hardest, and we stand by their side from the very first day by offering Visa-led initiatives such as global programs which we launched in Georgia, Where You Shop Matters campaign, as well as She's Next campaign supporting women entrepreneurs, so as well as the opportunities we are offering to the communities through our partner banks. And of course, this again stresses our commitment to develop the infrastructure and develop the and drive digital agenda in the country. And to summarize, I would stress that our decision to transform pandemic challenges into opportunities and it will be very successful just through strong mutual cooperation and understanding, and continuing driving cashless agenda in Georgia with more power and higher motivation. So we can do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I think I personally learned a lot during this discussion today already. So, and I think it's very, very helpful. I expect that there will be some interesting developments happening in Georgia following this trend of digitalization and development of e-commerce. And it's interesting that today and tomorrow I have some friends visiting from Europe here, and we're discussing with American friends and colleagues concept of trusted connectivity, which is like collaboration of different countries on connectivity issues, which is obviously part of the digitalization, global digitalization as well. And one of the subjects of discussion is obviously infrastructure development. And I would like to go to follow-up questions with all our speakers to think about what type of infrastructure elements you think is lacking in Georgia that would enable your businesses or your interests to grow. But before going there, I would like to ask Mr. Archil Mestvirishvili, more like a broader sort of important question. And this is in a sense, philosophical question as well. Georgia is in association agreement with the European Union, and it's a great benefit, but also great responsibility, plus great, in a sense, limitations as well, because there are different types of rules that Georgia needs to adapt to those rules. Some of these rules are, for Georgia, harder to adapt because of the lack of, again, prehistory of whether it was legislative background and so forth. Archil, my question to you is that, I mean, in terms of your role as a central bank, as a national bank of Georgia, how you see this harmonization of need for businesses like Payze and others to grow, and other startup companies, and entering in this field of digital economy, how it's harmonized with the requirements of whether it's global or European legal framework of responsibilities, a responsible financial system, which Georgia is part of. So how do you see this? Do you see it as first of all, as a challenge? And if you see it, how you try to sort of help and harmonize this or reduce the challenge?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think for us and for the central bank, we are regulators, so we see the value of regulation, and regulation should be clear, predictable, and well designed. So when we have approximation agenda and we try to not to copy paste directives, but to approximate. So there are some parts which are not relevant for Georgia, so we are free to omit those. But in general, those regulatory environment which European Union has, I think it's very beneficial for us as well, in terms of, at least in terms of the payment system. And for that, as I said, that we see this as an opportunity. For example, this open banking, it's a great opportunity for non-bank payment system providers. So they will have access to the customer data in the bank, so they can initiate the payment, or they can build the software where customer can manage their funds at commercial banks through their system. So I think that this is a great benefit, and it provides and it supports competition as well. So we see the great value in adopting European directives. Again, it's not that everything we need to copy paste. I think we had discussion with Visa, and we still maybe will have in the future. So should we need regulate interchange or not? So these are maybe more practical questions rather than philosophical. There are some costs, and there are some pros, and there are some problem is regulation of interchange. But I think that in the end, with the Visa, we agreed, and with the MasterCard as well, that we might introduce ceiling for interchange on sectoral level. But we are not in a hurry, so we have some more urgent things to deal with. And this interchange we will most likely introduce in a few years from now, with a proper discussion with market. We are not going to do it in a short period of time. This is just one example which is different from European Union standard, where you have the fixed interchange. For customer protection, for transparency, for equal access, those are very beneficial rules which are employing. And for us, I don't know whether we'll become part of the European Union anytime soon, but we try to leverage those regulatory environment, what they have, which in most cases are well tested. It's well understood for everybody, and these are the benefit we can deploy from them. So again, so I think that that's just these are just benefits for our market, and also the market participants, they know what's coming and it's clear, and there is a very low risk that this regulation will be skewed in wrong directions, because we know where we are aiming and market understands it. I don't know how it's seen from private sector, but this is how I see it.
Yeah, but I think most important thing is the predictability. As long as they understand what you are aiming, as you described it, and you have a kind of clarity on that, and that's my understanding, that you have definitely clear communication with the private sector on these issues. I think as long as regulatory environment is, as you said, clear and predictable. That's most important thing for the private sector, because private sector is resilient. It can adapt to a lot of difficulties and challenges, as long as I said, it's stable and predictable. So, but obviously, going forward, whatever the is maybe for the businesses to develop and grow, that's essential help to them. Now, I would like to go to all other speakers and ask this question about like what in terms of infrastructure, what kind of infrastructure you think would be most essential at this point to enable even more digitalization of Georgian economy? When I say digitalization, actually, I mean everything here, meaning e-commerce development, meaning payment system development, meaning access of different actors and different players into marketplace and so forth. So let's start with Nino, maybe.
Yes, when we look at the ICT infrastructure, we see that Georgia is pretty well positioned among regional countries. So we look at the basic features such as access to internet, access to mobile phones, access to computers in households and in businesses as well. So we see that Georgia is more like European countries in these terms than the CIS countries. We already talked about the regulatory environment, which is also very important for the sector development. But in big picture, we see that technologies are there. The infrastructure is pretty good in Georgia if we compare our peer countries. We see problem in education and adoption of these technologies in households, and as well as especially in businesses who don't use this infrastructure, these possibilities, technical possibilities that exist in our country. And if and when they will adopt to these technologies and increase their expertise in this sense, we think the sector will keep growing. We see positive trends already, so a future outlook is pretty positive from our view.
Thank you, Nino. Thank you. Anatoly, what's your view on this?
Thank you, Mamuka. I was speaking about the IT sector, but if we look on the wholesale and overall digital economy, I think besides the regulatory framework, and I agree here with Nino, I think that the most important is digital literacy and overall digital literacy in the country. Because to consume the digital services, you need to be able to use digital services. And for example, in countries like Kazakhstan, I was surprised how just one electronic tool like the Kaspi Bank application allowed to whole population of Kazakhstan to be able to consume digital services. Even those who were, the taxi drivers who were using old Nokias, today know how to transfer the vehicle on his daughter's name. And it's absolute surprise. It shows and demonstrates that not only in Estonia it's possible. So I think that above all, we know good English education in the school and overall digital literacy for all.
So we are all living in a happy world, unless we have, we just need the education. But I'm a little skeptical on that, but let's hear all of you. Irakli, what's your view on infrastructure?
Like on the sector overall, like basically, like based even on the report presented by Galt and Taggart, like 80% of transactions that are happening by cards in e-commerce is not happening in Georgian companies. It's happening from Amazon, eBay, or any other websites. Like we have the payments in the country. There are many different players, like, I don't know, us, the banks. We have kind of not limited, but at least a supply of developers, for example, or the companies or the platforms make you like just basically build a website where you can sell. But then like it's necessary to find the root of the issue, like why aren't people buying online in Georgia, right? So basically the main conclusion that could come up is that I guess the e-commerce platforms that exist in Georgia are not shaped in a way that are appealing to the Georgian citizens, or basically the pricing, the product category, the way the stock is managed, and probably some mistreatment of the customer are the main reasons. So like, at least it's my subjective opinion, but I guess the e-commerce platforms within the Georgia have to understand, like, I don't know, how Amazon works and kind of replicate the same thing and just apply it to Georgia. Like, we have so many good Western counterparts that are basically achieving the success, even based on this example that people from Georgia prefer to wait, I don't know, 2 weeks for a jacket to arrive here rather than just buy something online and receive it in the next day. It even could be in some cases the same jacket. So this is kind of surprising for me. Like,
this may be the matter of trust, maybe matter of some psychology as well, but obviously education and literacy and also comfort of dealing with these transactions, also trust factor, probably everything working together on this. Thanks, Irakli. Colin?
Yeah, thanks, Mamuka. I may be a bit of an outlier coming from sort of the venture side of things. I think because in the venture world, you're basically having to bet on teams without a lot of historical data, without a lot of sort of build out behind them. It's a very high dependency on trust. And so in the world in which I operate, a lot of what helps companies, and countries, with Estonia, for example, is relationships and reputation. So, we're really looking at sort of, for example, the work we did with Startup Grind, the work we're doing with Catapult Georgia, building a bridge. And it's essentially the bridge of trust between Georgia and Silicon Valley. And it's based on the planks of reputation and relationship. So little out of the box there, but
this in a sense complements what others were saying in an interesting way. So Diana?
Well, I think that in this case, so Visa's role in developing the infrastructure is very high. So based on our data, as Mamuka Archil mentioned before, so we are still heavy in cash. So from 100 lari, only 30 lari are paid. Are paid by the cards. So the rest are withdrawn from the ATM. So we have a huge potential there. And what we do from our side is that I would tackle the innovation. So we bring innovations, and one of the newest technologies that we bring is tap to phone. Actually, when your mobile Android device becomes the POS terminal, and we try to work with our partners in order to implement these solutions and in order to develop the acceptance infrastructure, right? Because from one side you have customers with cards, and from the other side, you have acceptance network where they need to, and especially in rural areas of Georgia, right, where there are no POS terminals where you can pay with your card. So actually the only thing you can do is just withdraw the money. So from our side, we bring innovations, and we try, and if we speak about e-commerce, so we are looking for the factors that are preventing development and are trying to fix them, right? So for instance, we have launched Safe Deal functionality with MyMarketG, right, with our partner, where customers are offered to pay upon the delivery of the goods. So such opportunities increases the level of trust, which we just talked about, to the online transaction overall, and respectively this drives sales. So we try to search for the opportunities in this regard, because we all understand that the opportunity and the the opportunity is huge. So we need to bring innovations and bring new technologies in order to develop the infrastructure.
Thank you, Diana. I think my reason I raised this question is that despite, obviously there's a progress tremendous, but I think some of the elements of physical infrastructure, even access to the rest of the world, whether it's cables and other things, internal fiber optics or other kind of delivery systems, I think there are still kind of room to develop. But my next question is to Archil, and I think it's an important question. Okay, Colin, you wanted to comment?
No, the other piece of infrastructure for us is direct flights.
Okay, that's something maybe America-Georgia Business Council should be spending more time on. But Archil, my question is also, it's in a certain degree, it's a general, it relates to something general, kind of challenging, but at the same time, it's specific for this discussion today, but you mentioned a very interesting thing to me personally, which is this independent dispute resolution body that will resolve conflicts between sides of transactions, which may develop very interesting experience for hopefully to other kind of dispute resolutions, business-related dispute resolutions in general in the country. Could you elaborate a little bit more about that? Because I see that as a good example of why how other disputes could be resolved in other areas as well. But does it require any kind of special legislative basis, or is it totally kind of regulatory based decision?
Yeah, it does require change in legislation, and this will be part of this new payment system law. So there is a requirement by PSD2 that this body where customers can dispute their transactions should exist. So that, and there is some special directive for dispute resolutions in Europe, but we will put this everything in this new law. So our vision is that it will be half professional. So they will have like a board which will be supported technically by the NBG, but decision makers will be payment system specialists, which will be independent from banks or other payment system providers. So this is just to increase trust in the payments. So, and we have lots of frauds, and based on the new law, and this requirement was existing in previous law as well, that if unauthorized transaction is made on my behalf, which I have not authorized, payment system provider have to reimburse, which becoming problematic to understand whether it was really unauthorized or customer sometimes they trigger these transactions themselves and now refusing that it was authorized by him. So there are some rules, and we have this strong customer, strong authentication, which kind of protects banks from this kind of behavior, but not from every behavior. So I think that this is where we have introduced, where we are trying to introduce this dispute resolution. Of course, you can expand, and we have some discussion as a central bank as well, that it can be expanded to some other business disputes, and it can be a model, but we have internal discussion for that as well, maybe for capital market as well, or maybe with regulator later. So there are some ideas, and we are exploring, and we will see when we introduce this for payments, we see how it will work, then we can expand.
Thank you. I think this will be interesting experience. Definitely, I'll be observing it with great interest how this process will evolve. I think we have arrived to the end of our allocated time for this discussion. I greatly appreciate everybody's time. This is, I hope this is our last annual session online, because I would like to definitely experience the presence of our participants, both speakers and audience. Hopefully next year in 2022, we would like to do it in Georgia, America-Georgia Business Council's 25th annual conference, which it's a quarter century already of our history, and it will be nice way to celebrate it if we do it in Georgia, hopefully in a nice fall day in Tbilisi. But before that, again, thanks to our speakers, everybody who contributed to this discussion with a great knowledge and experience. And Archil, thank you for your time. I know how busy you are, and everybody else, Nino, Anatoly, Colin, Diana, Irakli, thank you very much for your participation. And we are greatly reduced in numbers in audience, but whoever listened, I think, learned a lot. And we lost some of the audience down in the discussion. But remember that this is a resource which will be available online and will be shared with lots of our members and other interested parties. So thanks to all of the audience who to listen to our discussion. So thank you again. Happy holidays to everyone, and see you hopefully in 2022 in person. So good luck to everyone.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, and happy holidays, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.